Okay, you guys, so I wanted to come back and try to make another short video. Um, Someone wanted to know how I became an astrologer, why I became an astrologer, and I would like to answer that question. It's the one that I was drawn to the most and the one that's the easiest, doesn't involve any research. Um, I want to talk about the transits of 2019, but I need to prepare for that. And it's really fucking hot here, and I'm sweaty. Just turned up the air. So, how I became an astrologer. I was, all right, well, you asked for it. You asked for it. So I was, gosh, I don't want to tell my life story. I was living somewhere else at the time. Okay, I'll tell the story. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And I had been... Now, the events that I'm going to talk to you about coincided. I wouldn't really call it cause and effect. Even though something happened and then something else, and then something else, and then something else. So I was living in Brooklyn. I was living in a religious neighborhood, a Jewish religious neighborhood, because I had chosen that. Now, I had grown up part of the time religious, and then my parents divorced, and there were all kinds of shifts because of that. Okay. So in my own family, the religiosity decreased the older we got. Me and my siblings, I mean. Anyway, after my mother's death in my 20s, even though it had started happening earlier, but after her death, it sped up, that I wanted to return to my roots. I wanted to be religious again. I wanted to be more religious than my parents had been. And that is, even though I had dreamt, even though I had wanted to live in New York for most of my life, that is what got me there. What got me to New York were my religious, not dreams, but desire to live in a religious community. So I did that. Now, I think it was even while I can't remember. I mean, I fell away from it. I fell away from the life. I went off the derech, as they say. So even while, I can't remember if I had already strayed, or I can't remember where I was in the process, but at some point in my Brooklyn years, and I did live there for 15 years, I was Googling astrology classes in New York City. I don't even remember why I was doing that. I always had an interest like anyone else would, meaning I knew my sun sign. That was all I knew. Or I read horoscope in the paper or magazine. I was not into it, I didn't have some great aunt that shepherded me through astrology in my childhood or anything like that. So there I am in my early 30s, in New York, living in a very religious neighborhood, and probably still substantially leading most of that life. I decide to look for an astrology class, and I find one. Oh, wait a minute. Before I did that, I had found Susan Miller's Astrology Zone website. And I'm a Cancer. I didn't read for my rising sign. I read for Cancer, my sun sign. And there were parts of her forecast which were very, very accurate. And I thought, wow. And she was actually writing, what she was writing about was when Saturn was in Cancer. So, I mean, if Saturn is in your sign, it's going to be some trouble. It's going to be some pressure. So, parts of her forecast were very, very accurate, because obviously Saturn was in Cancer. Cancers were having a difficult time. And that's what caused me to look for a class in New York. And I found one. And that was the start. Now, I have written about this in a part of a manuscript that doesn't have, it's not finished yet, doesn't have a publisher yet, but I've written about some of this there. I wrote about it a little bit in my book, The Little Book of Saturn. I'll put the link below, of course. And so that was the beginning, was that I found a class. And it was a drop-in class for 2 hours. And for years I went every week, almost every week. I met wonderful people. It was a wonderful place, healing center, which actually doesn't exist anymore. There was all kinds of other stuff going on there. But that's what got me in the door, was the astrology class. And it was wonderful, and that was where I learned how to read a chart. And I learned my basics. I learned all the building blocks. So just as I describe in the book, actually, like week after week, we would, at least I think that stuff is still in the book. I don't remember, because there was a big rewrite. I don't recall now what remained. But week after week, we would come to class, and he would kind of teach us the same thing over and over again. So we would really get it, how to read a chart. And then there would be some event in the sky that week, and he would plot it out. Like if there was a new moon, he would show us where the new moon was, and then pick a volunteer and then analyze that transit in their chart. So every single week, and it changed my life. Now, I forget exactly, it was a couple of years later. I never thought I was going to, and I fell in love with it, okay? I fell in love with it. I became completely obsessed. I would go to my friends for Shabbos, which is what you do if you live in a Jewish, religious Jewish community. You go out for Shabbos, and which is Friday night, Saturday, certain rituals, synagogue services, meals. There's all the stuff you're supposed to do and not do. So I would go to my friends, and I couldn't stop talking about it. And of course, they found it a little bit strange. And I remember, and I was writing about this somewhere, like someone asking me, are you worshiping the sun and the moon? Like, what's happened to you? Eliza, are you worshiping the moon now? Like they couldn't get, some of them, although I was friends with, of course, I was friends with only the most amazing people in Brooklyn. Artists, they just happened to be very devout as well. But some of them could not wrap their heads around the idea that I could just be very, very interested in something and not worshiping it. It wasn't my religion, but it was taking over my life, clearly. I never thought that I was going to do readings for a living, never. But I had a friend at the time who said to me that I was. Our charts were amazing. We had amazing synastry, like everything matched up. My water sun, her water sun, my fire Venus, her fire Venus. I forget her rising. But our charts were extremely, extremely compatible. She was about 25 years older than me, too. So she had a lot of wisdom. And she said to me that I was going to do it. I didn't think so. Years pass. And this is a very clear memory. I think I had already started, I hadn't started my own blog yet. This might have been 2011 or 2010. But I was blogging for someone else, which I did for a few months. I think at first she said no, like she didn't need anyone else. Anyway, there was a period of time that passed, and then I asked her again, and then she said yes. So for a short time, I was blogging for this other astrologer. And then I remember a rainy day in Union Square. If you know New York, you know Union Square. In Union Square, there's, at least there was, a Burger King. I think it's a Burger King or a McDonald's. Maybe it's a McDonald's. And I don't go to McDonald's. I don't eat that kind of food. Anyway, no offense to anyone who does. But I don't eat at fast food restaurants. But it was raining. And I needed to just get out of the rain. It was like really, really bad. Bad storm. And I don't know, I found myself in McDonald's or Burger King, whichever one it was. And I have an astrology book with me. I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of those Liz Green, Howard Sasportas books, which are transcriptions of lectures. And they're wonderful books. I recommend anything by him, definitely. And I love their collaborations. And I can't remember, maybe it was a vocational section of the book. Can't remember exactly. Must have been, though. And they're taking audience questions. So someone's asking, well, what about Uranus trine MC? What kind of job would be good for Uranus trine the MC? And Howard answers, be an astrologer. And I took this advice to heart because I have this in my natal. My Uranus isn't up to much in my chart. But I have a trine to my MC. And I thought, okay, I will approach that astrologer again to blog for them. I think that's how, and then I did, and then after a few months, then I started my own blog. Because I felt I want to make money at this, which means I need to do readings. I want to make this my living. I had been a pet sitter, actually, for many years. And I was transitioning out of pet sitting into doing this. And I thought, if I don't have my own blog, if I don't have my own thing, it can't grow. It's not going to, I'm not going to go anywhere, writing for this other person. I need my own business. So it was reading that book. It was a rainy day in McDonald's. Uranus trine the MC. And I decided, I was also, not only was I pet sitting them, but I was also, a lot of you know that I was a poet. I have an MFA from Iowa. I don't know what the #1 creative writing school is now, but at that time it was a very big deal. It's been a big deal for decades. It was still a big deal then. But by the time I was in my early 30s, I had started writing plays, which is another long story. Now I forget how that part... Oh, now I remember. I couldn't remember how I went off on that tangent. So, I had been writing plays. I had been getting plays produced, mostly in short play festivals, different theaters across America. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do my own blog because I want any writing I do to be a direct line to my making money, to making a living that will make me happy. And I thought, I'm not going to write plays anymore. I'm not going to write poems anymore. I can't do it anymore. Like, I need to collapse my two different lives, Like, I was a pet sitter, playwright, so that was my day job and then my creative life. But I wanted one life. And I thought, strangely enough, thought it might be possible. This crazy idea that, okay, I'm going to blog. People are going to find my blog. They're going to like my blog. They're going to want to hire me to do readings for them. And that's actually what happened. So I hope that answers your question, young lady. I will keep your name anonymous. I hope that answers your question. So it was a series of fortuitous, possibly sequential events. And Susan Miller's Astrology Zone, which had a very accurate forecast for cancers. I think it was the spring also. Maybe I should stop here for now, watch this, see if it's good enough to post. And basically my standard for good enough to post means I don't look totally insane. That's pretty much my standard. You may notice I I do watch a fair amount of YouTube, but I more listen. So I don't know if people are always looking right at the camera, but I find I think a lot better. This is also why I don't like to be on camera for all kinds of reasons. But one reason is because I can't think if I'm like, focusing on my face or watching myself. I feel like my thoughts are not as clear, so I'm always going to be looking around or hiding, or often I position the computer so that I'm sort of looking off to the side. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that ramble, that life story ramble, and I look forward to answering more questions. I also look forward to not having this cough anymore. In the description box below, I'll put the links if you want to get a reading, if you want to purchase my book, become a patron. I forget what else. I'm not going to overload you. And I'll see you hopefully in the next one.